So here on the porch we have lots of plants that are waiting, getting ready to be planted. Some of them are tomatoes. This is a San Marzano tomato. Some of them are eggplants. Okay, Mitoyo eggplant. Here is a yellow pear tomato. See how big it's got. So the herb spiral has lots of different things growing on it. Some are for eating, some are herbs. Okay, my rosemary up here has got these beautiful purple flowers right now. We have lavender. Down here, this is a little herb called dittany that is just starting to show up. Okay, this big fellow is called lemon balm. Okay, it is used to make a tea or to add to flavoring for food. As you can guess, it tastes a little bit like lemon. Coming around over here, these are onions. Okay, super tasty. This is a plant called sorrel. It's getting ready to flower. That's why it's got these large central stalks. But sorrel is a very tasty plant. It's kind of a little bit sour. It's good for making something called saag, which is an Indian dish. Okay, or to make a sour sorrel soup. And of course, we have lots of mint, okay, that's growing here in the garden. Okay, this bed right here has just a couple of different things going on it. Raspberries in the back, some kale greens growing here and here, thyme in the corner. That's actually one of the first plants we ever planted in this garden. Okay. Now more Swiss chard, more mint, and then we have our celery, which that celery was planted in the fall and has overwintered, and now that it's spring, it's really exploding up. All right, so if you've ever wondered what a celery plant looks like, there we go. You can see the asparagus bed is growing up. Okay, this asparagus right here is pretty much too tall to eat. Once it starts to sprout like this, the bottom gets very woody, it's hard to chew. It would still taste good if you ate the tip, but it's not really worth it. What you want are these, when they grow up a little bit more, will be super tasty, like this one right here. Okay, would be a super tasty size of asparagus to eat. And we have been eating off this asparagus this whole break time. This is a pomegranate tree. Last year, or 2 years ago, I guess, when we planted it, it was a little stick about this tall. And you can see it's gotten bigger and bigger. Okay. It hasn't shown any signs of fruiting this year. It might be another year or two before it grows a fruit, but eventually we'll be getting fresh pomegranates off of this tree. One of the stars of this food forest side of the garden is this fig tree. When we first bought it, it was really small, really tiny, and already just in this past week, these giant leaves have showed up. Okay, this thing will eventually fill up this entire space and be the dominant thing here, but the cool part about it is here are the figs. Okay, and if you look carefully, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of these figs growing up from the sprouting from the tree. I think the last time I counted, there were almost 50 of them. Figs are one of my favorite fruits, and I cannot wait to actually get to eat some of these this year. The onions here are called walking onions, so eventually they will form a big flower stalk on the end, and that flower stalk falls over, and that causes the onions to plant themselves a few feet away. Eventually this whole area will be full of walking onions for us to eat off of all year. But for now, they've grown nice and big and strong this year, and we're super excited about that. Next to the walking onions, we have our potato beds. So these potatoes were just like little slices of potato. You take the part with the eye, you put it underground. As it grows, we'll cover them with dirt and add another layer. They grow, cover with dirt, add another layer. And ideally, it will fill up these entire beds full of potatoes for us to eat off of. But you can see they're growing nice and strong right now. So these little leaves right here are from a fruit tree called a pawpaw. We have another one over there we'll look at in a second. The pawpaws are some of the stars of our food forest because they are really cool, okay, relatively rare and more uncommon. People just don't know about them. They make a tasty fruit that you can't find in the store, and they're old, right? This type of plant had evolved to be eaten by a lot of the megafauna that we talked about earlier in the year. But without the megafauna gone, a lot of those plants have kind of disappeared, but the pawpaw is still here, right? And let's take a look. These pawpaws actually have flowers. And these flowers look a little bit different than like a normal flower you would think of. They hang down, they look more solid looking, but that's because they are pollinated by a type of fly that likes the smell of them, not by bees or butterflies or things like that. So here is one of the Nanking cherries. This is the white Nanking cherry. Before break, I shared pictures of this with you because it was covered with white flowers. All of the rain and the wind and time got rid of the white flowers. And so we're keeping an eye out for whether any cherries are going to form. And in fact, I just found the first cherry I've seen. So this is a Nanking cherry. And as it grows, it will get bigger and bigger and turn into a very tasty fruit. So that is exciting. Here along the brick wall, we have a bunch of different things going on. We have a gooseberry plant. This gooseberry plant this is its second year and it has grown a lot and will hopefully produce lots of very tasty, kind of sweet, kind of sour gooseberries. Next to it are our planting bags. These are kale plants, and then I believe these are spinach plants, and that is a Swiss chard. But these just grow in these grow in these bags instead of into the ground. And then next to it, this is horseradish. So these are horseradish plants that I collected last year and are growing. Okay, we have one, two. The third one is growing slower because I actually pulled it up and used it to make some food in the fall. And so it's just not quite as strong as the others, but it looks like it is coming back. So we will eventually have 3 horseradish plants. So this is a Chickasaw plum. It is a native tree. It'll get a bit taller. Okay, you can see it's in like a small alley back here, so we'll have to trim it up and make sure it kind of grows to fill this space, but doesn't grow too much into the neighbor's yard. The wind and rain from over the break knocked a lot of the flowers off. There's just a few petals left, but each of these spots, each of these little flower stalks, will hopefully become a plum over the next couple of months. And if that's the case, we will have so many plums to eat off of this tree. Okay, they're little like cherry-sized plums. I've never had one because I've never had a Chickasaw plum growing before, and they're not generally something you find in a store. So we're excited that we might get some plums this year. So even here in our back alley, we've turned this into growing space. We just finished this project over the break. So this is our art studio that we just put the walls and this new fence up and turned this, which was kind of nothing, into a growing area. Okay, right here is our white climbing rose that will eventually fill this whole space. There's some sage, some thyme, some lavender for beauty. Okay, but even back here, where we don't see it directly very often, we turn this into growing space. Here on the back deck, we have these planters. As the season goes, we'll put in annuals or one-year flowers that will grow here and be very beautiful. But for more permanent perennials, we've added these, which are grapes. You can see they don't need a lot of space necessarily, but these grapes will eventually grow up this arbor and cover it. And in fact, the ones over here on the other side, which have grown a little bit faster because they're a little bit more directly in the sunlight, actually have grapes growing. So we just noticed these this week and are super excited because there are lots of bunches of these grapes on here. Hopefully they will turn into full grown grapes before too long.